What is a cult? Is it a group with religious, ethical, or political teachings and practices that most of those outside the group disapprove of? Sometimes. Is a cult leader someone with unusually perceptive insights and or the capacity to convince others of the truth of his or her insights? Do his followers revere him because of his teachings and inspirational qualities? Do they see him as deserving of trust, loyalty, and obedience without question, despite any of his shortcomings, failings, or misdeeds? Well, it sounds pretty much like a definition, and an imprecise definition, but it hits the high points. Oh, it goes on.
It does? Oh, okay,
There's
go on.
another paragraph or two. Do some cult leaders knowingly misrepresent their integrity and selfless altruism? Oh no. And inspire confidence in their best intentions that is not warranted? Do some cult leaders inspire reverence in their followers by their insights, kindness, selfless altruism, and powers of communication? If so, how can people discern the difference between these two kinds? And what are the characteristics of cult followers whose leader is insincere and manipulative that render them susceptible to following such a leader? Well, the last one, I would say, as I always do, it's people who want answers rather than understanding.
I've always thought that was a very good measure for a number of things.
However, that's not the whole question, because we all know some very thoughtful people who sought understanding that found themselves in that position. But for most of the cults I've seen around, they don't try to impart understanding.
No, they try to impart coherence and obedience.
Yeah, and emotional experiences that may or may not have a psychic or spiritual dimension, and usually don't.
Well, yes, and there are cults that are not spiritual too.
There certainly are, indeed. I think there's one lurking about. So
we were talking about some aspect of cults.
Yeah, it's a long question.
And a complex question.
How to exactly take it apart and look at it. It's not formulated in the way my sense of logic would like.
Would you like to restate it?
Well, there are a lot of questions in here, and I might try to regroup them, but I'd have to hold them simultaneously in my head, and that's not going to happen.
Well, I know. There's a lot to be said here.
There is. If we start with the first question, besides what is a cult, because it goes on to ask questions about what is a cult. Religious, ethical, or political teachings and practices that most of those outside the group disapprove of.
That isn't what makes something a cult.
Yes, but it certainly you could. It's descriptive. It's not definitive.
Okay.
Well, and not only that is, it doesn't really cover all of the space
that's true.
People could be. A lot of people don't necessarily object to the cult. They don't care.
They don't care, or they don't know.
They don't. Well, they don't have enough care for the issue that the cult raises to bother to.
That's
observe,
true.
You might say oppose it or what have you. So I think the first statement there is not is not inclusive enough of all of the people who may not be a part of the cult.
Oh no.
Even implies that that's kind of the case, that they dislike it in some way or another.
Well, it says most of the people outside the cult disapprove of, and usually if they know enough about it, they do. But I think there are cults that aren't recognized as cults that maybe outsiders don't know whether or not they should disapprove of.
Well, I think a lot of the things that may be cults or may not be cults are not even known about by the majority of the people.
Sure.
They don't even operate on that wavelength.
That's right. That's right. They don't.
Certainly. But I think the question of what is a cult is pretty clearly defined.
Yes, I think so too.
And there are standard definitions, most of which are derived from J.R. Lifton's work.
Right. Well, and if you look at the cult members, they generally believe that most of those people outside the group disapprove of them, or would disapprove of them if they knew.
In fact, that may be part of their impetus for doing what they do.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, the people who handle the rattlesnakes and eventually get bitten, I guess they're part of the rattlesnake cult.
Yeah, they are. But they don't keep themselves a secret, but they don't invite all and sundry to come and participate.
Yeah, they don't. But I imagine if you ask people on the street, what is the cult of the rattlesnakes, or the people who handle rattlesnakes, and they wouldn't have the foggiest notion what you were talking about.
Well, most people might not these days. But
there's a lot of people who collect rattlesnakes and catch rattlesnakes who aren't necessarily a part of the cult, but
of course
admires the handling of them as something spiritual.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the past a lot more people had heard about them, but they haven't been in the news for a long time, and probably the more recent arrivals on the scene haven't heard about it.
Well, every now and then they have some program that digs into that a little bit, and it's kind of like going to the carnival and listen and being amazed by the bearded lady.
Yeah, it is a little like that. All right, the second part is, and I guess this is a sort of a, well, no, it says and or, not either. Is a cult leader someone with unusually perceptive insights and or the capacity to convince others of the truth of his or her insights? That's a little bit hard to zero in on.
Well, most cults have a charismatic leader.
Right.
Now, I guess this question asks.
I get it. I get. I think maybe you understand the question better than I do. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell me what did you just understand?
I think the question is saying, is the cult leader the leader because of the unusually perceptive insights, or is it the capacity to convince others of the truth of the insight, allowing that it's also possible that they were real insights?
Yeah, right. Well, that's one of the difficulties.
Yeah, it is. But the second part, the capacity to convince others, that pretty much goes with it.
Yes, and it also raises the question: are the insights true, and useful and helpful?
Yeah, but that's the first part of the question.
And the second part has to do with even if they are true and useful or helpful, does the charisma of the teacher necessarily cover the parts that are not true and helpful?
Oh, well, it could be either yes or no there, but generally the leader does convince the members of the truth of the insights.
Right. Yes, that's right. That's right. Then a derivative question, and I think one that gets asked a lot, is if this cult leader is true and charismatic and convincing and helpful, but also has done some bad things, does that mean they're not true?
Well, take a thing like the people who speak in tongues, and they have organizations, and they go to these meetings where everyone speaks in tongues, and some claim to understand what somebody else is saying, and others claim not to. But at any rate, I guess they used to call them in this part of the world holy rollers.
Yeah, they used. Yeah, and some still
Well,
do.
that's a much larger category, but it's included in the category.
But the question is that a cult? And
I think it depends on the people's relationship with their leader, whether that's a cult.
I think a lot of people would like to believe it is true, and they therefore make themselves easy to be convinced by people who are charismatic.
Well, I think we can step back from this a little and say that the definition of a cult doesn't have anything to do with whether their philosophy or theory or truth claims are true.
Yeah, it could be a cult either way.
It can be a cult based around something that's true. It can be a cult based around something that's false.
But if it's
if people are going to church and handling snakes or speaking in tongues, that doesn't make it a cult.
No. That's why I say it depends on their relationship to the leader and their attitude toward outsiders.
Well, I would think one of the ingredients for belonging to a cult would be a desire to believe that what the cult asserts is true.
Of course.
Well, of course, yeah. And that's one of the lifting criteria.
Right, and whether it is true or not is if this desire to believe it is not based on anything objective, then in fact, it's mainly a matter of their desire manifesting itself.
Right.
Yes, that does not say whether or not the principles of the cult are true.
No, it doesn't. But then it references any shortcomings, failings, or misdeeds. And I would say it's definitely a cult if no one's allowed to see or speak about those things.
Right. Milieu control is what was called.
Oh, yeah, that's good. But human beings do have shortcomings, so.
Right. And if you take somebody who has a great inspiration and great charisma to express it, that can be a wonderful thing. And if they act up or behave badly in another part of their lives, this is the question I asked before, does it make what they say untrue?
No. But it makes it definitely a cult. If the members are supposed to pretend either that it isn't happening or that it's divinely inspired.
Yes, those are generally the two responses that one hears in this circumstance.
Yeah.
Either it didn't happen or it's divinely inspired.
Yeah. Well, you might say the people who view cults are what they conceive of being cults. What they believe about them is more a matter of their belief about the truth or falsity of what it is that's being asserted, and whether it, you might say, in some way impinges upon something that they believe in or that they have some kind of desire to believe in.
Well, I think most of the real cult experts, they may have opinions about those things, but I think mostly they look at whether the members are being misled or abused in some way, and usually misled about the teacher.
And that is perfectly irrelevant if the thing is true, like as Stevie said. So
it's not irrelevant.
Their belief that it's a cult is, and what the implication of that is to them is what is that they believe that they have the onerous opinion that they have of cults in general.
Well, I mean, if you see mind control and abusive behavior and things like that, it doesn't matter if you're, reading out of scripture for your teaching. It's a cult.
Well, I mean, some people could make the audacious claim that scripture is precisely mind control.
Yeah, you could. But I don't, and none of the people I've heard speak on cults or write on cults have ventured anything like that. It's almost all about the
the confirmed atheist will be calling any manifestation of any tradition whatsoever as some kind of a cult.
Yeah, that's why we need a definition of a cult, and I think that the 8 Lifton criteria are pretty good for that, because they don't deal with the very nature of what's true or not, but how the group behaves towards its members and towards the outside.
Yeah, I think that's
value.
The real question that most cult experts ask is it harming the members?
But that's
along with that, is the leader dishonest about non-spiritual things?
But here again, that's just purely an opinion on their part.
Well,
they can say it's harming those people, and those people can turn around and say, no, it's taking me to heaven.
I know.
How can they?
We're waiting for the spaceship to arrive.
That's right. Since the comet is about to enter the solar system, it's time for us to
take poison.
Yes, drink a lot of alcohol and take some barbiturates.
Right. So that we'll be passive and we'll ascend, or whatever they thought. But that's clearly a cult. It gets people to do things against their own interests.
Well, you could very well say that these people that go around accusing everybody to be in some way or another racists, they belong to the cult, to a cult.
Not well.
And if it's not harmful to them, it's certainly harmful to the people they accuse it of.
Well, personally, I think almost everybody is a racist, whether they know it or not. However, it's a question of knowing better, not whether you have bias.
Well, it sounds like to me that's just your opinion. And your opinion is an opinion that would like to look down upon a certain group of people because you want to think that they are racist.
No, I'm not. It's not a certain group. I think it's almost everybody. And it's a question of whether they have some awareness of it and don't act on it. And I would put myself in that category. I grew up with, some prejudices.
If it is everybody, it's not a category any longer that is of any particular use.
Well, it's a category of attitude toward the other. It's a category of inclination or something like that. It's not a moral issue necessarily. What's moral or immoral is how you treat people.
Well, and of course, everybody's got their own opinion, I guess, about how you treat people. So in fact, we've reduced this whole thing to nothing. Nothing. It means nothing in it at all.
Wait a minute. What means nothing? I'm lost. What means nothing?
Cults mean nothing.
Okay.
If we think that everybody, in fact, is a member of some cult, or if they're a racist, or they're a whatever, then you don't any longer have a category that bears any weight.
Well, normally, normal definition of racist, which I also agree with, is: do you treat certain people better than other people because of their race? That's what I call, and it need not be severe,
and it need not be negative.
Well,
and it may not be existent at all. It may be purely a figment of your imagination.
Well, I know it happens. I've seen it happen.
Well, we've seen all this happen. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway,
Anyway, racism is not a cult, so let's leave that aside.
I have here the 8 Lifton criteria for defining a cult.
All right, let's hear them.
Number 1, milieu control. The group or its leaders control information and communication both within the environment and ultimately within the individual, resulting in a significant degree of isolation from society at large. I note here that none of this has to do with the truth value upon which the cult is founded.
That's right.
Number 2, mystical manipulation. The group manipulates experiences that appear spontaneous to demonstrate divine authority, spiritual advancement, or some other exceptional talent or insight that sets the leader and or the group apart from the rest of humanity, and that allows a reinterpretation of historical events, scripture, and other experiences. Coincidences and happenstance oddities are interpreted as omens and prophecies.
That can be. I'm not sure that's an absolute, that description, but it catches the flavor.
Well, it's one of 8. None of these are definitive in themselves.
All right.
Well, it seems like to me all of the political opinions that I run into nowadays, both liberal and conservative, fall all within that category and fulfill your particular definition.
But there's a difference between a cult member and a true believer, for instance.
Right. That's why there are 8 criteria.
Yeah, exactly.
That was number 2. Want to hear number 3?
Sure.
The demand for purity. The group consistently exhorts members to view the world as black and white, conform to the group ideology, and strive for perfection. The induction of guilt and or shame is a powerful control device used here.
Yeah, I wouldn't word it that way, but that purity thing is pretty important.
And that black and white thing, you're either with us or against it. You're either with us or against it. You see it our way or you're out. You're
exactly. That could be said about the true believer also, but the true believer doesn't have to feel, that clean definition of black and white, just has to be convinced of one of them.
Yeah, and one true believer doesn't make it a cult.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, but it's an us and them kind of attitude that is common among cults. There may be cults that don't have it, of course. That's why there are 8.
Okay, next point. Confession. The group defines sins that members should confess either to a personal monitor or publicly to the group. There is no confidentiality. The leaders discuss and exploit members' sins, attitudes, and faults. That's certainly been true of the cults I've been part of.
The confessions?
The discussion of others' weaknesses and groups.
Oh, well, yes. But the confession part, I know that can play a big role in some Christian cults, because Christianity has that thing about confession. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with confession; it's good, right. But there's a form of confession that is a little bit like, having to face the party leader and say how you've fallen short and being faithful to the party. There's the confession can run in that kind of way, in which case it not only can be abusive, but it serves to undermine one's self-confidence, and in the interest of avoiding egotism, it tends to undermine the person, especially the individuality.
True, beyond the individual. All right, ready for number 5?
Sure.
Sacred science. The group's doctrine or ideology is considered to be the ultimate truth, beyond all questioning or dispute. Truth is not to be found outside the group. The leader, as the spokesman for God or all humanity, is likewise above criticism.
Oh, now that is a cult.
seen that. All right. Next point, loading the language.
All right.
The group interprets or uses words and phrases in new ways that often the outside world does not understand. This jargon consists of thought-terminating cliches, which serve to alter members' thought process to conform to the group's way of thinking.
Yeah, the thought-stopping thing is the main thing, because lots of groups have, specific meanings for things that
right.
are not apparent to the outside. Like if I talk about the problem of having too much attachment, I'm likely to be misunderstood.
Yes, or when you consider trying to consider a particular complex phenomenon, and someone says, "Oh, that's just profane thinking."
Oh yeah, now that's thought limiting.
Yeah, that's what we're discussing here. Thought terminating cliche.
Yeah, the thought terminating. That's quite characteristic. It's probably not in every cult, but it's commonly found.
And that that is certainly expressed in oh, that's just liberal disinformation.
Yeah.
Or, that's just conservative propaganda.
Yeah, exactly.
That's supposed to eliminate thought.
Exactly. Or that's woke.
Right. Yes, that's right. There's a cliche.
Or that's I can't think of a word, but there are a number of words that could do the same about someone repeating a view from the right. I mean, I've heard them. I can't. Anyway, I mean, the only reason I know woke is because it's current.
Yeah, and it is a thought-terminating cliche.
Yes, it is.
Point 7, doctrine over person. Members' personal experiences are subordinate to the sacred science. Members must deny or reinterpret any contrary experiences to fit the group's ideology.
Yeah. It's a little like don't believe your eyes, I think is what that one is trying to point to.
Okay, last criteria. Dispensing of existence. The group has the prerogative to decide who has the right to exist and who does not. This is usually not literal, but means that those outside the group are not saved, are unenlightened, are unconscious, and must be converted to the group's ideology. If they do not join the group or are critical of the group, then they must be rejected by the group members. Thus, the outside world loses all credibility. In conjunction, should any members leave the group, he or she must be rejected also.
Yes, that's very characteristic of really extreme groups and some mild ones.
Yes.
I mean, after all, how many times did we hear references to the profane people?
Right. Well, hey, it's happening now. It's the Nasser cult. They're not allowed to be friends with people from the rest of the Sufi order.
Oh, I guess that's right.
Yeah.
Well, we left, and we must be disowned.
Well, they're active discouragement for people maintaining their friendships with people outside their group.
Yeah. No, it's shunning.
It's a cult.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, we haven't heard from you since we started this.
Well, that's interesting, but it seems to be so inclusive as to include everybody.
Really?
I know a lot of groups that are not cults, and a number of the Christian groups that you've referred to, like snake handlers and holy rollers. I'm not sure they would fit under the Lifton criteria.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure that they would what?
They would fit Lifton's criteria of a cult.
No, I don't. Most wouldn't.
Some may, but that would involve things I don't know about.
In nearly every group you run into nowadays, you run into a collectivity of people within it that are like that, like your 8 counts. I mean, it's not, you find it in almost every tradition.
Sure. Yeah. Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the group is right or that the tradition is false.
No, it's a particular kind of group dynamic that can form. And it doesn't have to be cult-like. Sometimes there are group dynamics that form that are harmful to the group or to some of the members that aren't cults. It may just be jockeying for power or approval. But there are always these dynamics that can be benign or malignant.
Right. I mean, you have your Elmer Gantry types.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. It really was wonderful.
I never saw it. I guess I should, because it's part of the culture.
Right.
Yeah, it's a classic.
And then, of course, there are people who use those opinions of people when they don't believe a word of what it is that they're of it. They are merely using an idea that these people are susceptible to motivate them to do things that they want them to do.
Yeah, and that brings up a deeper question. Why are those people susceptible?
Yeah.
What is it they want or need or are looking for that makes them vulnerable to these things?
They want to believe in something that you might say makes them free of all manner of things that they feel guilty of or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's an identity issue.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's also it can come from a feeling of inferiority that you need something, approval or rising to the structure of the organization or something like that to confirm. But that's identity, to confirm your worth or your identity.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And those are things that can give energy or fuel to a cult, but they're not cult-like in themselves.
They don't make it a cult. Yes.
No, those are human frailties.
I think you might say that some of them so want whatever it is they want to such a degree that they're willing to believe in anybody who gives them some kind of evidence that it might be true.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you. I've seen that.
Yeah. And there's some people that want money so much they'll do anything to get it. But it's not that different.
It's just a different population.
Yeah, it's a different focus. It's a different kind of I want. The question is it going to cost you something of yourself that's real, or is it going to cost you something of yourself that's not real or not important?
I mean, it was what Satan was trying to do to Christ by asking him, why doesn't he change the stones to loaves of bread?
Yeah.
I mean, Satan knows that the people would all follow someone who gave credence to their desires and beliefs. And that's
I don't think
that would be something that the public would come to. But he did in fact perform miracles, but I don't think they were for that reason.
Exactly.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jesus saying, those miracles don't belong to me. Don't ask me for them. So, I think that almost everybody is a whole lot of people are susceptible to acting in cult-like manners. Right. It's a kind of corruption of oneself in order to get something that you think you need. As I say, whether it's esoteric teaching or approval or whatever. And anybody who needs something from somebody else is not free. And also, don't follow anyone who wants something from you. Those are two good rules. In our everyday conversation, a lot of people are all the time saying things
that they know will be pleasing to you.
Yeah, that's true.
In order to gain your confidence in them. And in order for you to be manipulative, you are able to be manipulated by them.
It's way different from an honest compliment. It's manipulative, which tells you all you need to know.
And so we engage in those kinds of things, or a lot of people do, or the society in general does, in certain kinds of behavior and ways of speaking towards each other.
Right. I know we all know we've done it.
Right.
It's one of those ever-present temptations, if you will. And none of us is perfect, but it'd be nice not to do that.
Well, I mean, gee, folks, there's nothing wrong with being nice to people.
No.
There's nothing wrong with facilitating a positive interchange by extending a compliment.
No, I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
I'm talking about in order to manipulate your relationship with the other person, rather than simply express it or express appreciation for it that perhaps the other person doesn't realize you appreciate,
Right.
But if somebody says, oh, you're so much smarter than those other people because he's trying to get you on his side.
Danger.
Yes, exactly. That's not
parents sometimes will turn one child against another in order to, you might say, control.
Yeah, control. That's dangerous.
Well, yes, but if you're a parent, you need some control to keep your children safe. Oh,
yes, but not control for its own sake.
No, for their sake.
Yes, exactly.
Or so they say. They tell themselves. Yeah,
this hurts me more than it hurts you, right?
Yes, or you have to live in this way. Well, overprotection is a kind of rejection.
I mean, there's a lot of things that fall under the category of what we're talking about that you might say would not necessarily fall under the category of a cult, but gossip.
Yes.
Gossip is a good example of something that is used to manipulate and to control people and to make them all believe certain kinds of things. But whether gossip per se is just a tool of a cult, or it's actually because of the content of what's being gossiped about, part of it, I don't know.
Yeah, it's rarely good, even if it's just a kind of vicarious something, or anyway, it's when you tell gossip, a lot of times, sometimes you just do it and you're not really thinking about it, but a lot of gossip is an attempt to elevate yourself as someone who knows a secret, or to diminish the person you're gossiping about.
Because they have a contrary opinion or a lifestyle.
For whatever reason. And neither of those are good, because they're
most of the deceits of Satan are what they call whispering in people's ears, is, you might say, to use something that is false to defeat something that is true.
Well,
what?
Yes, to use something that's false.
Yes, right. Yes, that's right.
Pretty good description of malicious gossip.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even though the literal meaning of the gossip may be true, if it's negative gossip, it's almost always false in some way.
And if it's intended to manipulate.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, if you're telling somebody something that you believe they really need to know about this other person for your benefit,
or that you're trying to process yourself and want to talk about it.
That isn't necessarily gossip.
No.
All talking about somebody else is not gossip.
No, a person who gossips already knows the incorrectness to some extent of what it is they're saying,
Yeah,
or the context that it's being used in that it shouldn't be used in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that most people who do that have a feeling of being naughty, you know.
Right.
But some people enjoy being naughty.
I've known some of those people.
Yeah, well, did we get through the list?
Well,
I think we were kind of wandering around between 2 or 3 parts of the last one, maybe.
Well, we can continue this on our next call.